The first time it happened, I thought I was losing my mind. I woke at midnight. The compound was silent. The moon was full and brutal through the window, the kind of full moon that does not give light so much as it takes darkness and replaces it with something colder, something that shows you everything whether you want to see it or not. I reached for my daughter. Her side of the mat was empty. Adayeze was 7 years old. She slept beside me every night the way she had slept beside me since she was born, curled toward me, one small hand near her face, her breathing the particular soft rhythm I had memorized before she was 3 days old. I knew that breathing the way I knew my own heartbeat. I would have felt her absence before I was fully awake. I was fully awake. She was gone. I did not walk to the door. I ran. I hit the door frame with my shoulder, and I did not feel it, and I burst into the compound yard, and the moon was so bright it was almost like daylight, except colder and more honest. And I looked left and right, and across to the gate, and toward the borehole path. She was there, in the middle of the compound yard, standing completely still in the full white light of the moon, her back to me, her white sleeping dress catching the moonlight and giving it back in a way that made her look. Adayeze, I held her face in both hands. Where were you? Where did you go? She looked at me with my mother's eyes and her father's forehead and her own complete, inexplicable calm. I was not anywhere, Mama, she said. I was sleeping. I told myself it was sleepwalking. Children sleepwalk. My own cousin had walked into a kitchen fire at age 8 in the middle of the night and woken up at the sound of his own skin. Children go places in their sleep that their minds do not record. I told myself this. I counted the days until the next full moon. 29 days. On the 29th night I did not sleep. I sat on the mat beside my daughter with my back against the wall and my eyes on her face, and I watched the moon rise through the window and climb and reach its full height and flood the room with that cold white light. At midnight exactly, she sat up. Her eyes were open, not awake. She stood. She turned toward the door. She began to walk. I grabbed her, both arms around her from behind, holding her the way you hold someone you are not willing to lose, and she stopped. She stood in my arms, and she did not struggle, and she did not speak, and she was cold all through, cold down to the bones I could feel through her small arms, and she pulled. Not with her body. Her body was still. Something else pulled, something that was using her body the way water uses a channel, flowing through, not caring about the shape of the thing it moves through, going where it intends to go. I held tighter. The pull increased. Adayeze! I said her name into her ear. Adayeze, come back to me! Come back to me right now! Nothing. Adayeze! The compound stayed sealed. The sleep that had no natural explanation held every person behind every door. My voice went up into the thatched roof and came back down and went nowhere else. And then my daughter turned her head. Slowly, the way things turn when they are not fully in control of the turning. She looked at me over her shoulder. Her eyes were open, and they were not her eyes. The colour was wrong. The depth was wrong. What looked out at me from behind my daughter's face was old in a way that a 7-year-old child could not be old. Patient in a way that had nothing to do with childhood. It looked at me, and it smiled. With my daughter's mouth. My daughter's smile. I did not let go. I want you to understand this. Whatever was behind my daughter's eyes, whatever had been using the full moon to take her somewhere I could not follow for 2 months before I caught it, I looked it in the face, and I did not let go of my child. Not then. Not ever. But holding on and knowing what you are holding against are different things. And what came for my daughter every full moon at midnight, what I saw in those yellow eyes in the compound yard, was something I had no name for. Not yet. 3 years it took me to find the truth. 3 years of full moons and midnight vigils, and a daughter who woke every time with cold hands and no memory, and those eyes, those yellow eyes fading back to the brown ones I had known since the first morning of her life. 3 years before I finally understood what had come for her, and why, and what I had done, without knowing, without meaning to, in a single moment 14 years before she was born, to invite it in. What I found at the end of those 3 years was not a story I was prepared for. It was not human. Let us go back to where this story truly begins. But before I do, please subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who loves a good African story. Tell me in the comments which part of the world my wonderful Rooted Stories family is watching from tonight. Now make yourself comfortable, because this one does not end the way you think it ends. Let me tell you about my daughter before I tell you what came for her, because that is the part that matters most. Not the yellow eyes, not the full moon, not the thing I eventually found at the end of 3 years of searching. The part that matters most is who Adaize was on an ordinary Tuesday morning when the sun was up and the compound was loud and she was simply a child living her life without knowing that anything was coming for it. She was the kind of child who collected things. Not valuable things, not the things other children wanted. She collected the small, specific things that nobody else thought to notice. A stone shaped like a sleeping dog found on the path to the borehole. A feather from a bird she had seen only once and described to me for 3 days afterward with the precision of a scientist who had missed her error. A piece of bark from the old neem tree at the compound entrance that had fallen during the rainy season, which she kept wrapped in a piece of cloth because she said it smelled like something important. I asked her once what it smelled like. She thought about it with the seriousness she brought to accurate things. Like before, she said. I did not know what before meant. I did not ask. With Adaize, there were some answers that led somewhere and some that led to a place I did not have the map for, and I had learned early to receive what she gave me and not push for what she was not ready to give. She was my only child, not for lack of wanting. My husband, Namdi, and I had wanted more, had hoped for more in the way of couples who love each other and believe that love expands to hold whatever comes. But Adaize came, and then the years came, and she remained singular, our one, the specific, irreplaceable one. Namdi worked as a clearing agent at the Onitsha market. He left early and came back late, and he was tired in the specific way of men who spend their days navigating other people's paperwork and other people's urgency. But he was never too tired for Adaize. This was the thing I loved most about him, without finding the words for it, that whatever the day had taken from him, he always had something left for her. He would come through the gate with his shoes dusty and his shirt damp from the day's heat, and she would appear from wherever she had been, and something in his face would change. Release. The way a fist releases when it finally has something worth holding.
We lived in a good compound, not large, 4 households inside the walls, a guava tree in the center yard that dropped fruit every August without being asked, a borehole path 20 minutes walk that we shared with 2 neighboring houses. Our landlord, Papa Eze, was 71 and moved through the compound with the authority of a man who had built the walls himself and remembered which parts needed watching in the rainy season. We had been there 4 years. It was home in the way that takes time to become. Not immediately, not from the first morning, but accumulated, built up from the daily texture of a life lived inside a particular set of walls until the walls themselves become part of you. I was happy there. I want to say that clearly. Before everything that came after, I was happy. The first full moon night, I did not understand what I was seeing. She was 5 years old. I woke at midnight to find her side of the mat empty, and I ran outside and found her standing in the compound yard in the full white moonlight, eyes open, not awake. I carried her in. I held her until the moon moved, and she came back to herself and said she had been sleeping. I told Nnamdi the next morning. He looked at me. He looked at the worry in my face. He said, "Children sleepwalk, Obi. My own brother walked into a wall twice before he was 10. I told myself he was right. The 2nd month, I was less certain. The 3rd month, I stopped telling myself anything and started watching. What I learned across those 3 months was this. It was always the full moon, not the night before, not the night after, the specific night when the moon reached its fullest and the compound was flooded with that cold white light that had a quality different from any other light, heavier, more deliberate, as though it was not illuminating the compound but claiming it. Always midnight exactly. I checked against Nnamdi's wristwatch on the 2nd month and again on the 3rd, midnight. The same way a clock strikes, not approximately, not around that time, exactly. Always the same direction, from her mat, through the inner room door, across the compound yard, toward the far wall near the old neem tree, the same path, every time, as though she was going somewhere specific, as though something was calling her from a specific place and she was answering. And always the eyes. The 3rd month was when I finally saw them clearly, with the preparation of a woman who does not know what she is doing, but understands that doing nothing is no longer an option she can live inside. I went to Mama Uzochi first. She was the oldest woman in our extension, 81 years old, small and dry as harmattan wood, with eyes that had seen enough of the world's real texture to have stopped being surprised by any of it. She lived 2 compounds from ours in a room so full of things accumulated over 8 decades that moving through it required the particular navigation of someone who understood its internal logic. I had never gone to her before about anything serious. I had greeted her on the path and brought her food at the compound festivals and received her opinions about the price of gari and the declining quality of modern marriages. But I had never sat across from her with something real between us. I sat across from her now. I told her about the full moon, about midnight, about the yellow eyes. She listened without moving, without the shifting and readjusting that people do when they are receiving information that makes them uncomfortable. She sat completely still, and she listened, and her face did not change. When she finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "How old is she?" "7," I said. "And this started when she was 5? "Yes." She looked at her hands in her lap. 2 years it has been coming for her. She said it the way you say a thing that has a weight you are acknowledging. And you are only now coming to me. I did not answer. There was no answer that was not also an accusation of myself. She looked up. Before she was born, she said, something happened, something you did or something was done to you in a place that was not ordinary. A shrine, a forest, a river, a crossroads at the wrong hour. She paused. Think carefully. Think back further than feels necessary. I did not need to think carefully. I knew exactly what she was referring to. I had known it since the first full moon night, since the first time I saw those yellow eyes and felt, beneath the terror, beneath the mother's desperate love, a recognition I did not want to have. I had been 17. I will tell you the full story in its proper time. What I told Mama Uzochi that afternoon was the shape of it, enough for her to understand the nature of what had found my daughter and why. She listened. She did not judge. When she finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "It has a claim. Not on your daughter, on you. But you were not available. You were already a grown woman, already a wife, already a mother, so it took what was closest to you." She looked at me steadily. A child is always the closest thing. Something cold moved through my chest, fast and sharp and very deep. "How do I stop it?" I said. She looked at me for a long moment. "You cannot stop it from out here," she said. "You have to go where it takes her." I stared at her. "Follow her," she said. "On the 4th full moon, do not carry her back inside. Follow where she goes, and do not stop following regardless of what you see or hear or what your body tells you to do." She paused. "And Obiageli." "Yes." "Whatever speaks to you in that place, whatever calls your name, whatever shows you a face you recognize, whatever tells you things that sound like truth, do not answer until it has finished. Everything it needs to say, let it say. Then you speak." I took the cord home. I put it in the tin where I kept my important things. I counted the days. I told Namdi that evening, not everything, enough. He looked at the cord in my hand. He looked at my face. He was quiet for a long time in the way of a man running through every alternative and finding each one insufficient. "I am coming with you," he said. "No," I said before he finished the sentence. "Mama Uzochi said only the one who carries the original debt. Anyone else is—" I stopped. "It will use them against me. It will use your face." I looked at him. "Stay with her until midnight, then I will take her." He looked at me for a long time, at my face which I kept as steady as I could, which was not very steady. "Come back," he said. Just that. "I will come back," I said, "with her." The moon rose full and brutal the way it always rose on these nights, not gently, not gradually, but arriving at its fullness all at once, as though it had been waiting behind a door and the door had been opened. The compound sealed itself the way it always sealed on these nights, the wrong sleep descending over every household, every room, every person behind every wall. Namdi fought it. I saw him fighting it, sitting against the wall with his jaw set and his eyes determined, and I watched the sleep take him anyway. Slowly, then completely. I tied the cord, my wrist first, then Ada's. The moment the cord touched her wrist, her eyes opened. Yellow, luminous, patient. She stood. I stood with her. She turned toward the far wall, toward the old neem tree at the compound entrance. She began to walk. I walked beside her. Through the compound gate, down the path between compounds that I had walked 1,000 times in daylight, past Mama Uzochi's house, dark and quiet, past the borehole, down the narrow path that bent toward the bush at the edge of the village, the path that in daylight was ordinary and had a name, and at this hour, in this moonlight, was none of those things. I held my daughter's hand. I did not stop. The trees on either side grew taller as we walked. The light from the village faded behind us. The sounds faded too. The distant generator, the last dog, the ordinary percussion of a sleeping community, replaced by the bush sounds, the night birds, the particular quality of air that belongs to a place where the ground remembers things the people living above it have forgotten. Ada's walked without hesitation. She knew this path. She had been walking it every full moon for 2 years without me. I held her hand. I did not stop. We came to a clearing. I had not known this clearing existed. I had lived in this village for 4 years and walked these paths, and I had not known this clearing was here. A perfect circle of open ground surrounded by iroko trees so old their roots had broken the surface and created the kind of natural seating that is not accidental. The moonlight fell into it directly, completely, as though the trees had arranged themselves specifically to let it in. In the center of the clearing, something waited. I will tell you what I saw, and I will tell it plainly, because plainly is the only way to say it. It was a child, a girl, small, perhaps 8 or 9 years old. She was standing in the center of the moonlight with her arms at her sides, and she was wearing white, and her feet were not touching the ground. Not hovering dramatically, not floating with any performance, simply not touching, the way you notice a detail that is wrong before you can name what is wrong about it. Her eyes were yellow, the same yellow as my daughter's eyes on the full moon nights, the same luminous, patient yellow, but on this face they were not wrong the way they were on Ada's face. On this face they were simply what the eyes were, what they had always been. She looked at me, not at Ada, at me. I remembered what Mama Uzochi had said. Do not answer until it has finished. Everything it needs to say, let it say. I held my daughter's hand. I stood at the edge of the clearing. I waited. The girl thing in the center of the moonlight tilted its head slightly, the way a person tilts their head when they are looking at something they recognize. Then it spoke.
Its voice was not a child's voice. It was the voice of something that had chosen a child's shape, the way you choose a coat from a hook, because it was useful, because it fit the shape of what was needed. Underneath the child's register was something old, something with no beginning that it could remember. You came, it said. I said nothing. You came, it said again, not surprised, satisfied. The satisfaction of something that has been waiting a specific length of time for a specific thing and has now received it. It looked at Adaeze, then back at me. She is not yours to keep, it said. You know this. You have always known this. I said nothing. 14 years ago, it said, you came to the Iroko Grove behind your mother's village. You were 17. You were alone. You came at the wrong hour, and you took something that did not belong to you." It paused. "You took 3 leaves from the base of the oldest tree for a love charm for a boy whose name you have probably forgotten by now." I had not forgotten the boy's name. I had forgotten everything about the feeling that had sent me to that grove at the wrong hour, the desperate 17-year-old certainty that this particular boy was the difference between a life that mattered and one that did not. I had forgotten the fever of it, the absolute conviction. But I had not forgotten that I went, or what I took, or that something had watched me take it. You took without asking, without the proper words, without the offering that is owed when you come to a place like that and take what grows in it. Its yellow eyes were steady on me. We do not forget these things. We are not built to forget. We wait. "You waited 14 years, I said. My voice came out steadier than I had any right to expect. "We waited until you had something worth the debt," it said simply. Something cold moved through me, the particular cold of a truth arriving that you have been half knowing for a long time, that I had brought this to my daughter, not deliberately, not with malice, with the ordinary thoughtlessness of a 17-year-old girl who did not know that some places remember and some debts do not expire. My daughter had been the payment for 3 leaves, for a boy whose face I could barely recall. I stepped into the clearing. I felt the moonlight hit me differently inside it, heavier, more direct, the way you feel the sun differently when you step from shade into full exposure. The thing in the center watched me come. It did not move. It did not change its expression, which was the expression of something that has been doing this for a long time and is simply waiting to see which version of this particular scene it is in. I stopped 3 feet from it. I looked at it, at the yellow eyes, at the feet not touching the ground, at the child shape that was not a child. "What clears the debt?" I said. A silence. "You know what clears it," it said. "Tell me," I said, so that we are speaking the same thing. It looked at me for a long moment, then it said, "Return what you took, with the proper words, with the offering that was owed 14 years ago, at the tree where you took it." It paused. "And you come alone, not the child, not the man, you." "And she is free," I said, "completely. Every full moon, every midnight, you release whatever claim. The debt is cleared. We do not hold what is not owed." The moonlight, the clearing, 2 women facing each other, one of them not quite a woman, one of them not in the world she had walked through for 31 years. I looked at my daughter. She was standing beside me, her hand in mine, her eyes still yellow and still not awake, still in the place between here and wherever these full moon nights had been taking her, still held by the cord between our wrists and by the grip I had not loosened since we left the compound. I looked at her face, at the face I had memorized before she was 3 days old, at the forehead and the jaw and the particular way she held her mouth when she was listening to something she was not sure about, at the child who collected stones shaped like sleeping dogs and pieces of bark that smelled like before, and could look at a feather for 3 days with the focus of a scientist who had missed her era. I looked at my daughter. Then I looked back at the thing in the center of the clearing. "I will come," I said. "Tell me when." "Next full moon, before midnight, the Iroko Grove behind Umunze village, the oldest Iroko.
It paused. Come correctly this time. The clearing, the moonlight, Adaeze's hand in Obiagele's, the cord between them. Something released. I felt it, a loosening, like the tension leaving a rope that has been pulled tight for a long time. It moved through the cord and into my wrist, and up through my arm and into my chest, and when it arrived, it felt like the particular feeling of a door that has been stuck finally giving way, and the air on both sides equalizing. My daughter's hand changed in mine, warmer. I looked at her. Her eyes were closing, not the yellow closing, the brown closing, her own eyes finding their way back from wherever they had been, the particular way she lids came down when she was genuinely tired, the way she always looked in the last moment before deep sleep. She leaned against me, her full weight, her warm, ordinary human weight of my daughter. "Mama," she said, her voice, normal, completely hers. "I am here. I have you." She did not answer. She was already asleep, standing in a moonlit clearing with her head against my side, asleep the way only children can be asleep, completely, without reservation, with the total trust of a person who has found the safe place and does not need to stay awake to protect it. I stood there for a while. I stood there until I was sure she was truly back, until her breathing settled into the rhythm I knew, until her hand in mine was the hand I knew, warm, slightly sticky the way children's hands are always slightly sticky, gripping me in sleep with the grip of someone who has no idea they are gripping anything. Then I lifted her. She was heavy, heavier than she had been the last time I carried her, which was 3 months ago when she had hurt her foot on the borehole path, and I had carried her home with the particular urgency of a mother whose child is in pain. She had grown in those 3 months. Children do that. They grow while you're looking at other things, while you're watching their eyes for yellow and counting days to the next full moon, and sitting across from old women with cords twisted from materials you cannot name. They grow anyway. I carried her home. Namdi was at the door before I reached the gate. I do not know how long he had been standing there, long enough for the harmattan to have worked on his face, leaving it the particular dry tightness of a man who had been standing outside in the cold, waiting for something he was not sure was coming. He saw us. Something left his face that had been in it since midnight, a weight, the specific weight of a man who has been holding himself together by force of structure and has just been given permission to stop. He crossed the yard. He took Adaeze from my arms without a word. He held her against his chest and stood there in the compound moonlight and held her, and she did not wake, and he closed his eyes. I stood beside him. I put my back on his hand. The compound, the moon past its peak, the first suggestion of the sky considering grey. "Is it finished?" he said, his voice very quiet, against our daughter's hair. "Not yet," I said. "One more thing. Next full moon, I go alone." He was quiet for a long moment. "Tell me everything," he said. "Inside," I said. "Let me put her down first." We went inside. We laid Adaeze on the mat. We covered her with the wrapper she preferred, the blue one with the small yellow pattern that she had chosen herself at the market the previous year, with the absolute certainty of a child who knows what belongs to her. She slept. Namdi and I sat on either side of her in the lamplight, and I told him